Sherry Jo Elliott. On Wednesday, November 16, 1983, a teenager named Sherry Jo Elliott left her home on Seneca Street in Flint, Michigan, around 6:30 in the morning to catch her school bus near West Dartmouth and Clio roads. She never made it. It was a cold November morning, and the bus stop was close to home. She should have been at school within the hour. Sherry Jo lived with her mother Joyce Schultz and stepfather Robert Schultz. Her Aunt Judy Sika later recalled her warmth, saying she can still picture Sherry Jo walking in the door and giving her a hug. 4 days after she vanished, on November 20th, a man setting muskrat traps found her partially clothed body in a ditch in Bloomfield Township, Saginaw County, about 40 miles from where she had been taken. She had been harmed and shot 4 times. Medical examiners determined she had been kept alive and held captive until as late as November 19th. Someone had taken this girl and kept her for days before ending her life. Michigan State Police focused painfully and wrongly on her stepfather Robert Schultz. Her mother later said, "They were always trying to say it was my husband, and he would never hurt a child, ever." Robert lived under that cloud of suspicion for decades. He died in 2025, still suspected by some, never cleared during his lifetime. The case sat cold for nearly 43 years. 43 years of a family carrying the weight of not knowing, while the man who actually took Sherry Jo lived freely less than an hour away. How does an investigation get it that wrong for that long? Then in 2023, MSP's 3rd District Cold Case Unit reopened the investigation. They partnered with Othram Labs in 2025 and sent students from Western Michigan University's Cold Case program, supervised by Dr. Ashlyn Kurstin, to rebuild the evidence archive. University students, working alongside veteran detectives, went back through boxes of evidence that had been sitting in storage since the Reagan administration. Othram used forensic-grade genome sequencing to generate a SNP profile from preserved 1983 biological evidence and fed it into investigative genetic genealogy. The technology that cracked this case did not exist when the crime was committed. It barely existed a decade ago. But the detectives who bagged that evidence in 1983 made everything that followed possible. The leads pointed to one man. His name was Ronnie Collins, born February 9, 1950, in Chicago, a 75-year-old musician and Grand Blanc, Michigan resident. He was 33 at the time of the crime. Police say he had no known connection to Sherry Jo, a stranger who took her off the street. He had been living in the area for decades, just 40 miles from where Sherry Jo's body was found. And no one ever looked at him. But before detectives could confront him, Collins took his own life on January 20th, 2026. DNA taken at autopsy was matched to the preserved 1983 evidence, confirming him as the person responsible. MSP publicly named him on April 13th, 2026. Lieutenant Kim Vetter stated that although Collins would not face prosecution, detectives believe the identification provides long-awaited answers. Joyce Schultz, reacting to Collins ending his own life, said, "I am glad he's dead, but I am still processing all of this. I still miss her every day. I will for the rest of my life." A mother who spent 43 years not knowing, who watched her husband be wrongly suspected until the day he died, and who now has a name but will never get to look the man in the eye and ask him why. The case is now administratively closed. MSP is asking whether Collins was tied to other unsolved cases. A completed DNA profile now sits in a database, and investigators want to know, was Sherry Jo the only one? Sherry Jo Elliott's case was cold for over 4 decades before DNA pointed to a stranger. But the next case had a name attached to it for just as long, and it still took 52 years to prove it with science. Laura Ann Aime. Laura Ann Aime was born August 21, 1957, in Lehi, Utah. She grew up in Fairview, Sanpete County, a horsewoman and animal lover who once tamed a wild deer into a family pet. She attended North Sanpete High School before dropping out. Her younger sister, Michelle Impala, remembered her as passionate about animals, saying Laura took her everywhere. By the fall of 1974, Laura was living in the Lehi area, a young woman navigating life on her own terms in a state that was about to become the hunting ground of one of the most prolific figures in American criminal history. On Halloween night, October 31st, 1974, Laura left a party in Lehi on foot, reportedly heading to the Knotty Pine Cafe. She was never seen alive again. Nearly a month passed before anyone found her. Hikers came across her body off American Fork Canyon Road on Thanksgiving Day, November 27, 1974. She had been bound, beaten, harmed, and strangled with a nylon stocking. The method matched a pattern that investigators would later come to recognize as the work of one of the most notorious figures in American criminal history. The man suspected of her death had moved to Salt Lake City in September 1974 to attend the University of Utah Law School. His name was Ted Bundy. Before his execution by electric chair on January 24, 1989, in Florida, he verbally acknowledged the case, but Utah authorities said his manipulative confessions alone were insufficient. At one point, he could not even recall whether she was a victim. Bundy was a master of control, even in his final hours, dangling confessions like currency, giving just enough to keep conversations going, but never enough for a formal charge. The case lingered for 52 years without scientific confirmation. Everyone believed Bundy did it. But believing and proving are two very different things. The breakthrough came not through genetic genealogy, but through new genotyping technology acquired by the Utah State Crime Lab in 2023, capable of reconstructing complete profiles from degraded samples. Utah County Sheriff Sergeant Mike Reynolds reopened the case in 2025. The lab pulled a single male profile from pristinely preserved evidence and uploaded it to CODIS. In March 2026, Florida authorities notified Utah that the profile matched Bundy's archived DNA. After half a century of suspicion, assumption, and verbal games from a condemned man, the science had finally caught up to deliver what his own words never did: proof. Sheriff Mike Smith announced the case officially closed on April 1st, 2026. He said had Bundy been alive, the DNA match would have supported seeking the death penalty. Bundy was never formally charged with Amy's case during his lifetime. He went to the chair for other crimes in other states, and Laura Ann Aime's name was left hanging without official resolution for more than 5 decades. Michelle Impala spoke at the press conference. "I know that she would be really happy to know that it's closed, and just to know that Ted Bundy is gnashing his teeth in hell. The completed Bundy profile is now available for other agencies. Wyoming DCI has flagged 4 1974 to 78 cold cases for review. Bundy operated across multiple states during that era, and law enforcement in at least 4 states have unsolved cases from the same time period that fit his pattern. Laura Ann Aime waited 52 years for science to confirm what everyone suspected. How many other families across multiple states are still waiting for the same profile to answer their questions? It took 52 years to prove what everyone already believed about Laura Ann Aim. Her sister Michelle had lived her entire adult life, knowing in her gut what happened, but never having the science to back it up. Bundy confessed to dozens, but his words were calculated performances, not admissions of truth. DNA does not perform. DNA does not negotiate. It either matches or it does not, and in March 2026, it matched. But the next case was a complete mystery for over 3 decades, until DNA linked 2 separate cases to a man nobody had ever suspected. Jennifer Persia. Jennifer Persia was a sophomore at Sterling High School in Magnolia, New Jersey. A saxophonist in the concert band, color guard flag bearer, and a varsity letter track athlete as a freshman. She lived on the 100 block of Jefferson Street in Magnolia, Camden County, with her mother, Georgia McNear. She was the kind of student who showed up everywhere, the kind whose absence would be felt immediately. A gazebo in Magnolia's Albertson Park bears her name today, a permanent marker in a town that never forgot what happened to her. On Monday, April 4th, 1994, around 8:45 in the evening, Magnolia police responded to an unconscious person call at the Persia home. Jennifer was on the living room floor, having been wounded more than 20 times with a cloth ligature around her neck. Defensive wounds showed she had fought back. She did not go quietly. Whatever happened in that living room, Jennifer resisted. She left marks on her attacker, and her attacker left blood at the scene. That blood would sit in a database for more than 3 decades before it finally led somewhere. Magnolia PD and the Camden County Prosecutor's Office collected blood from her socks, a door, and a closet, all traced to an unknown male. Uploaded to CODIS, it produced no match for 32 years. A 2021 Parabon Nanolabs lead was pursued, but ultimately ruled out. For over 3 decades, the identity behind that blood remained a ghost in the system. A man who bled at a crime scene and somehow never appeared in any law enforcement database anywhere in the country. Who was he? And would the answer ever come? The answer came from an unexpected direction. 8 miles away in 1993, a woman named Marbeth Welsh had been found under similar circumstances. In August 2025, preserved clothing from the Welsh case was resubmitted to the New Jersey State Police. Biological evidence yielded a profile that, via CODIS, linked Welsh's case to Persia's for the first time. 2 separate cases, 2 different victims, 1 man responsible for both. Investigative genetic genealogy pointed to a Mantua Township construction worker named Francis T. Schooley. In January 2026, detectives obtained DNA samples from his parent and sibling. Kinship analysis on March 9, 2026, found the profile was at least 4.8 million times more likely to belong to a child of Schooley's parent than to a random person. 4.8 million times. The math does not leave room for doubt. Schooley was not some stranger who appeared out of nowhere. He had performed construction work at Persia's stepfather's home and his Sterling auto shop business. He even part-owned a mini race car the shop sponsored. He was around the family. He knew where she lived. He knew her routines. And he was never in CODIS because he had no prior record that would have put him there. That is the gap that allowed 32 years to pass. A man with no criminal history walks through the cracks of every database designed to catch people like him. But there will be no trial. Schooley took his own life in 2000, at 39 years old. He was gone 6 years after what he did to Jennifer, and 7 years after what he did to Marbeth Welsh. Whether he ended his life because of guilt, fear of being caught, or something else entirely, no one will ever know. Prosecutor Grace C. McCauley announced the identification on April 9, 2026, stating he would have been charged in both cases were he alive. Jennifer's father, Sister Carol Persia Ross, and nieces attended the press conference alongside Welsh's daughter Melody. Two families, two different cases, standing together for the first time because the same man had torn through both their lives. The prosecutor said, "It settles that feeling deep inside. It gives them a semblance of peace." A semblance, not the whole thing. Because peace requires a courtroom, and the courtroom requires the accused to be alive. Jennifer Persia's case sat in CODIS for 32 years with no match. But the next case involved a perpetrator who did not just leave DNA behind. He left taunting messages for years, daring police to find him. April Tinsley. April Marie Tinsley, born March 18, 1980, was a student at Fairfield Elementary School in Fort Wayne, Indiana. She sang in the children's choir at Faith United Methodist Church and was remembered for her blue eyes, shy smile, and mop of curly blonde hair. On Good Friday, April 1, 1988, around 3 in the afternoon, April returned to a friend's house to retrieve her umbrella and vanished from the 2300 block of Hoagland Avenue. A witness saw a white man in his 30s force a girl into a beat-up blue pickup. 3 days later, a jogger found her body in a ditch along DeKalb County Road 68, about 20 miles away. She had been harmed and strangled. Her undergarment was found inside out. Biological evidence was collected and preserved. The case had physical proof of who did this, but no name to go with it. But the person responsible was not finished. In May 1990, a crayon message appeared on a barn in St. Joseph Township. "I kill 8-year-old April Marie Tinsley. Did you find the other shoe? Ha ha, I will kill again." He misspelled her name. He was mocking the police and the family at the same time. Then, over Memorial Day weekend 2004, he left 4 notes on girls' bicycles and in a mailbox, 3 of them in plastic baggies containing disturbing personal items. DNA on those items matched the profile from the original evidence collected in 1988. The same man. 16 years later, still in the area, still taunting, still targeting young girls. Police had his DNA but no name to attach to it. For 30 years, this man walked free while leaving behind a trail of evidence that science could not yet use to find him. The breakthrough came just 2 weeks after the April 25th, 2018 Golden State Killer arrest, which proved that genetic genealogy could crack cases that traditional forensics could not. Fort Wayne Police Detective Brian Martin immediately saw the opportunity and engaged Parabon Nanolabs. Head genealogist Cece Moore uploaded the SNP profile to GED Match and narrowed the suspect pool to 2 brothers by July 2, 2018. From a database of distant relatives to 2 specific brothers in less than 3 months. Police pulled 3 used items from one brother's trash, and the DNA matched. 30 years of taunting, and it took genealogy less than 90 days to put a name to the profile. His name was John Dale Miller, 59, who lived in a trailer at Grabble Mobile Home Park, 15 miles northeast of Fort Wayne. He had been in special education classes and had no felony record, only traffic citations, which explained his absence from CODIS. A man who taunted police for 3 decades, left DNA everywhere, and still was not in any database. When officers approached him on July 15, 2018, he simply said, "April Tinsley." 2 words. He knew exactly why they were there. He had been waiting for this moment for 30 years. He later admitted he had planned the act, had not known April, drove her to his trailer, and ended her life. On December 7, 2018, Miller pleaded guilty. Judge John Surbeck sentenced him on December 21, 2018 to 80 years, 50 plus 30 consecutive, no appeal. April's mother, Janet Tinsley, told Miller in court, "You took her life. We want yours." 30 years of wondering. 30 years of crayon messages and taunting notes left on bicycles. And it ended with a guilty plea in a courtroom and a sentence designed to make sure he would never see the outside again. Miller died of natural causes at St. Vincent Indianapolis Hospital on September 4, 2025, at 66 years old, 7 years into his sentence. He never served even a fraction of what the judge handed down. A memorial bench and pink magnolia tree remain at Fairfield Elementary, a permanent reminder of a girl who went to get her umbrella and never came home. If you've made it this far and enjoy deep dives into the most shocking criminal cases, hit that subscribe button and don't forget to press the bell icon. April Tinsley's case is the only one on this list where the person responsible was actually convicted. But the next case shows what happens when DNA identifies someone, and the legal system still cannot deliver a trial. Dawn Momahara. Dawn Takeo. Momahara was a sophomore at President William McKinley High School in Honolulu, a member of the Leo Club, Science Club, and part of the school's Moonlight Memories activities. Her father, Takeo, had died in a quarry accident 6 months before her birth. She lived at 1270 Elm Street with her mother, Mabel. Her friend Jan Kohler described her as shy but warm, that kind of laugh. Where once she started, everyone else would too. On Sunday, March 20th, 1977, Dawn took a call from an unknown male and told her mother she was going to Ala Moana Shopping Center. She never returned. At 7:30 the next morning, a teacher found her body on the 2nd floor of McKinley's English building, partially clothed, with an orange cloth around her neck. She had been harmed and strangled. Someone had called her, lured her out of her home on a Sunday evening, and ended her life inside her own school building. The phone call meant this was not random. Whoever did this knew Dawn well enough to get her to leave the house. Who makes that kind of call and then takes someone to a place they both knew? HPD released sketches of a young Asian male and a 1974-75 two-tone Pontiac Le Mans. On March 28, 1977, detectives interviewed Gideon Castro, a 1976 McKinley graduate who had met Dawn at a 1976 school dance, and his brother William. Castro said they last spoke at McKinley's February 1977 carnival. Detectives noted the connection, but could not make a case. The investigation went cold for decades. Decades later, in May 2020, an HPD criminalist extracted a partial male profile from biological evidence on Dawn's clothing. In 2021, Othram built a full genome profile. FBI forensic genetic genealogists reverse identified the Castro brothers as potential matches. What followed was a careful, multi-state covert operation that spanned 2 years. In November 2023, detectives traveled to Chicago and covertly obtained a sample from William Castro's adult offspring, and William was excluded. That left Gideon. In Utah, they covertly sampled Gideon Castro's son, who was confirmed as a biological match to the unknown contributor. The son's DNA pointed directly back to his father. Detectives then obtained a sample from Gideon himself. It was a direct match. The man police had interviewed in 1977. The classmate who knew Dawn from school dances. The graduate who chatted with her at the February carnival just weeks before her death. Was the one who called her that Sunday evening. He had sat across from detectives 47 years earlier, told them when he last saw Dawn, and walked away. Gideon Bellamidi Castro, 66, had moved to Utah and was living in a nursing home in Mill Creek, gravely ill. He was arrested January 21, 2025. At his nursing home on a fugitive warrant, a 66-year-old man in a nursing home, arrested for something he did when he was 18. Castro waived extradition on February 26, 2025. It looked like the case was finally moving toward a courtroom. But on March 11, 2025, prosecutors wrote that they could not currently proceed due to complications involving a material witness and the state of the evidence. After nearly 50 years and a confirmed DNA match, the prosecution stalled. On March 13, 2025, a Utah judge ordered Castro released, with the case dismissed without prejudice, allowing refiling. As of April 2026, Castro has not been rearrested. HPD considers the case solved investigatively, but legally it remains unresolved. DNA identified the man. Genealogy confirmed him through his own family line. Detectives traveled across the country to build a case. And then the legal system could not hold him. Dawn Momohara's family got a name, but not a verdict. They know who called her that Sunday evening in 1977. And they know he is alive and free. Is that justice? Or just information? Dawn Momohara's case shows that identifying someone through DNA does not always mean a courtroom. But the next case involved two victims found together. And it would take 45 years and a technology that did not exist until recently to pull a profile from evidence most labs would have considered useless. Jeremy Pickens and Lynn Vest. Jeremy Pickens was a young boy, and Lynn Hokuli Vest was his 23-year-old aunt who was babysitting him. Lynn was a former dental assistant and stay-at-home mother to her own 18-month-old son, Shane. She was doing a favor for family, watching her nephew for the day. Jeremy's grandfather, Don Hochuli, was a 17-year veteran Columbus Police Department detective, a law enforcement officer's own grandchild taken under these circumstances. Family described Jeremy as a happy little boy with the sweetest soul. He was just starting his life, and Lynn was in the prime of hers. On November 12, 1980, around 11 in the morning, Lynn left the house with Jeremy in her husband's blue 1979 Ford Mustang Cobra to deposit checks and shop for shower curtains at Woolco, a routine errand on a Wednesday morning. They were last seen near Hamilton and Main in Whitehall around noon. Then, nothing. No calls, no sightings, no sign of either of them for the rest of the day. Around midnight, officers found the Mustang abandoned at Berkeley Road and East Main. What they found inside was devastating. Lynn had been harmed and strangled with a thin cord. Jeremy had been suffocated. A bedsheet and towel partially covered them. Lynn's purse and wedding ring were gone, and the car had been wiped clean. Someone had taken the time to try to remove any trace of themselves. A young mother running a simple errand with her nephew. And neither of them made it home. 20 Columbus homicide detectives worked the case. Witnesses described two men in a white car harassing Lynn at a Save Mart gas station and following the Mustang. Two men in a white car. following a young woman driving alone with a small child. Someone tried to use her stolen credit card at the Ohio Center 3 years later, but the lead went nowhere. Detectives chased tips for years, but nothing stuck. Ohio BCI generated a CODIS-eligible STR profile in 2010, but it produced no match. For over 4 decades, detectives had physical evidence, but no technology capable of turning it into a name. The case needed something that did not yet exist. In late 2023, Columbus PD, Sergeant Terry McConnell engaged investigative genetic genealogist Amanda Reno of Advanced DNA. In 2025, working with Astrea Forensics in Santa Cruz, they attempted something most labs would have considered impossible: sequencing 2 rootless hairs recovered from Lynn's body in 1980. Hair without roots contains no nuclear DNA, only mitochondrial DNA, and for decades that meant it was essentially useless for identification. But Astrea's technology pulled a usable profile from those 2 tiny strands, and genealogy work pointed to a single name. Investigators exhumed the suspect's remains in fall 2025, and the DNA matched. The name was Charles William Elliott, a career criminal described as in and out of jail across the country, and a stranger to the victims. He had no connection to Lynn, no connection to Jeremy, no connection to the family. He was a predator who saw a young woman alone in a car and followed her. Weeks after the Columbus case, he committed armed jewelry store robberies in Clinton County, Ohio, and attempted a violent escape from the Clinton County Jail on December 27, 1980. Elliott died in prison in 2000 at Southern Ohio Correctional Facility in Lucasville. He was already gone long before science caught up with what he had done. The case was publicly solved on January 23, 2026, but it remains officially open. Witness accounts suggest Elliott had an accomplice who remains unidentified. 2 men were seen following the Mustang. Only one has been identified through DNA. The other is still out there, or gone, and no one knows which. Columbus PD is publicly seeking information on Elliott's associates. Cheryl Button, Jeremy's mother and Lynn's sister, said, "It's never going to be over. We'll never know why, probably, unless they find another person and they're still alive." She lost her son and her sister on the same day, and 45 years later, she has one name but not the other. 2 rootless hairs solved a 45-year-old case, but the next one took even longer, more than half a century, and it turned out that not 1 but 2 men were responsible. Pamela Conyers. Pamela Lynn Conyers was a flute player and band member at Glen Burnie High School in Maryland. Classmate Michael Golden called her the sweet girl next door, saying, "I got to be old." She didn't. She's forever 16. On Friday, October 16, 1970, Pamela attended the Glen Burnie Homecoming Bonfire, returned home, then borrowed her family's 1967 Dodge Monaco around 8:30 in the evening to drive to Harrendale Mall for shoe polish for the next night's homecoming dance. She was excited about the dance. She just needed shoe polish. She never came home. Her car was found October 19th near Mountain Road and Route 100. Her body was found in a wooded median October 20th, about 20 yards away from the car. She had been strangled and harmed. Her pullover was inside out, and her undergarment and purse were missing. A girl borrows the family car for shoe polish and never makes it home. The car sat undiscovered for 3 days before anyone found it. For over 50 years, No one knew who did this. Decades of dead ends followed. Investigators briefly wondered whether the case was linked to Sister Kathy Sesnick and other Baltimore area cases, but no connection was ever proven. Tips came in over the years, none of them led anywhere. For more than 50 years, Pamela's family lived without answers. Her classmates grew old, they raised families of their own, and she stayed forever the same age in their memories. The flute player who went to get shoe polish and never came back. The first breakthrough came when the FBI's forensic genetic genealogy team worked with Parabon Nano Labs on evidence from cigarettes found in the car, plus a latent print. On March 10, 2023, police identified the first person responsible, Forrest Clyde Williams III. But the investigation was not over. There was a second unknown male profile still in the evidence. One person identified, but science was saying there was another. Anne Arundel County submitted the second profile to Othram in March 2023. On March 18, 2024, police named a second person, Donald Willard. 2 men, not one. This was not a random act by a lone individual. 2 people planned this and carried it out together. For 53 years, investigators had been looking for one person. The truth was worse. Forrest Clyde Williams III, born December 12, 1948, was a 21-year-old drifter and carpenter originally from Virginia who had attended Northeast High School in Pasadena, Maryland. He died in Salem, Virginia in 2018 at 69. Donald Willard was a handyman for Haverhill Contracting Company, which was working on the very Route 100 construction site where Pamela's body was dumped. He knew the terrain because he worked on it every day. He knew exactly where to leave a body because he had been building that road. Willard died in 2010 at 74 in Montgomery County, Maryland. The 2 men were both hunters and regulars at the Mountain Bar on Mountain Road in Pasadena. The apparent link between them. Neither appears to have known Pamela, a carpenter and a handyman, drinking buddies at a local bar, and between them, they ended a young woman's life and kept the secret for over half a century. Would either of them have done it alone? Or was it the combination that made it possible? Both are dead. Neither will ever sit in a courtroom. Chief Amala Wad stated, if he were still alive, he would have been charged with the murder of Pamela Conyers. The case remains officially open as police seek information on Williams and Willard's associates, particularly Mountain Bar patrons. Investigators want to know if anyone at that bar heard anything, saw anything, or knew what these 2 men did on the night of October 16, 1970. 56 years is a long time to keep a secret, but someone at the Mountain Bar might still be alive with information that matters. 2 men, 2 DNA profiles, and a case that took more than 50 years to crack. But the final case on our list involved a young woman, a 2-tone car, and a perpetrator who tried to disappear by enlisting in the military just 9 days after the crime. Carol Sue Klaber. Carol Sue Klaber of Fort Wright, Kentucky, was a junior at Dixie Heights High School and a violinist in the school's string ensemble. Her cousin Debbie Ponder remembered her as happy, friendly, and a genuinely good person. She often rode her bike at Devou Park in Covington. On June 4, 1976, after bike riding, Carol returned home with a young man in a 2-tone car. A neighbor saw her leave again with him. She left around 5:30 in the evening to dine at Zeno's Hyde Park restaurant. The next morning, a dentist spotted her body in a roadside ditch on Chambers Road near Walton, Kentucky. She was nearly unclothed, wearing only a blouse. She had been beaten with a tire iron, strangled, and harmed. Witnesses described a suspect with sandy, wavy blonde hair driving a white Chevrolet Monte Carlo or Pontiac Grand Prix. KSP. Detective Jerry Keith worked the case for nearly a decade. 2 early suspects were pursued but never matched. The case went cold for decades after Keith retired. In 2017, the Boone County Sheriff's Office established a cold case unit, giving old cases new eyes and new resources. Detectives Coy Cox and Tim Adams took up the case, and in 2019, extracted DNA from a hair recovered at the scene. That profile definitively cleared the original suspects. After all those years of suspicion pointed at the wrong people, science proved they were innocent. But it also meant the real person was still unknown. What would it take to find him? In September 2022, Boone County partnered with Othram, funded by nonprofit Season of Justice. Within 2 months, Othram came back with a lead. The turnaround was remarkable considering the evidence was nearly half a century old. In January 2023, genealogy pointed to a specific family. In February 2023, the suspect's daughter voluntarily gave DNA, and the result was a 100% parent-child match to the crime scene profile. A daughter's willingness to provide her own DNA brought her father's darkest secret into the light, nearly 5 decades later. The name was Thomas W. Dunaway, born May 20th, 1958 in Park Hills, Kentucky. He lived 1.5 miles from Carol's home and drove a 1973 Chevrolet Monte Carlo matching the witness description, which he disposed of shortly after the crime. He was 18 at the time. He lived in the same neighborhood, drove the exact car witnesses described, and then got rid of it. 9 days after Carol's body was found, he enlisted in the U.S. Army. 9 days. He took a life and then tried to disappear into the military, but he could not stay out of trouble. He went AWOL that December, and on December 17th, 1976, he took the life of 19-year-old Ronald Townsend in northern Kentucky. 2 lives in 6 months. He received a life sentence, served 7.5 years, was paroled in 1984, then accumulated an extensive and violent criminal history before dying in December 1990 at 33. He lived fast, harmed people at every turn, and was gone by 33. But his DNA outlasted him by decades. Boone County Commonwealth's attorney Louis D. Kelly declined a posthumous indictment on ethical grounds, but wrote that the evidence would have sufficed to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Before the March 8, 2023 press conference, Detective Cox obtained a court order to exhume Dunaway's body to collect CODIS-grade DNA. Carol's brother Thomas Klaber told the New York Times, "I wish I had known in 1990. What do you say after all this time? I had some rather unchristian plans for him." The case is cleared by exception. Dunaway's exhumed DNA has been uploaded to CODIS to test for additional unsolved crimes. No further links have been publicly reported as of April 2026. Thomas Dunaway enlisted in the Army 9 days after what he did to Carol Sue Klaber. Took another life 6 months later and spent the rest of his short existence moving through the criminal justice system. DNA found him 26 years after he died. Too late for a trial, but not too late for a name. This was all from our side today. Thanks for watching. Click here to check out another video.